What's up, everyone? Colby Cheese here, and I'm going to be doing a Dead Island Riptide review here. This is a game that I was a little bit interested in playing because I did actually play all the way through the first Dead Island game, and I was one of the ones that did actually enjoy it. So, I mean, I didn't think it was the best game ever or anything like that, but it was a cool experience to play through one time at least. So let's go ahead and talk about the differences of this game. That way, if you played the first Dead Island, or if you haven't, you'll kind of know what is new and different about this one that you did not see in the first game. So first off, you do start at level 15 this game, so you do get a chance to already put in a couple points, which is nice. That's cool because all the characters are essentially the same until you start putting in those extra points. And the game obviously has the same engine and the same gameplay style and all that as the original. I also noticed a lot of things were the same as I played through the game, so the actual pacing of the game is very similar to the first one. The reason I say that is because the first game, you start off on like some beaches on an island and you do a lot of driving, a lot of long-range trekking throughout a giant area, and then you move into smaller stuff where there's no cars and things like that. You're just inside of a city and you're moving between rooftops and moving in city streets, and then you go through like sewers. You do all of the same stuff in this game. So it's like they paced it the exact same. It's just like in a different setting essentially. Now there are some new things that they added to the game. There is a new character that is called Joe, and they added him in the game. He's just the, I guess, weapons expert, or you could just say him like the punch people in the face expert. I played this game through for a few hours on Jean, I don't know, whatever, however you say her name. She's a knife expert, and that was okay, but I was like, man, I want to try out this new character. So I did start a whole new game. Now, unfortunately, I don't have all the footage from that because my hard drive screwed up, and I beat the entire game recording a lot of stuff, and none of it's here. So you're just going to watch me play some early footage on my first character. So whatever, that's fine. But essentially, you just use fist weapons on this guy, and you punch things to death, and he's actually probably a little OP. It made the game extremely trivial. I'll talk about that a little bit later, I guess. So some other new stuff about this game, I guess you can have boats, which you only use early on in the game, in the first sequence, and then after you go to the next section where you're in the city, you don't ever see boats or vehicles again. It's just regular combat. So essentially, it's the same exact game with a new character if you play the new character. And the other thing that they added in, which you'll get to kind of mess around with every once in a while, is that they added a mission type where you and your little group of survivors are all standing around defending this area. So it's kind of like a zombie defense level, and there's some ways to make it a little bit easier for you. Almost every person in your little group, including the other people that would be players if you're playing online. Like if you're just playing single player, you could do missions for all of the other characters that would have been in the game, and it upgrades their weapons. And there's some shopkeepers, you can upgrade their shop, which I think it just makes everything cheaper that you buy from them, which doesn't really matter because you get way more money in this game that you will ever use, as far as I'm concerned. At first you may be a little bit short in the first couple levels, but the more you play the game, you're just gonna have just unlimited money essentially. So really the only thing new in this game is that you get to do those kind of missions where you have to go set up mines and you put up some fences and you try and defend from a giant horde of crazy zombies, and you can kind of upgrade your people by doing basically fetch quests for them. So that's really the main difference that I see in this game. So when it comes down to it, if you liked the original Dead Island, you're going to like this game. If you did not, then there's no reason to pick this one up because it's literally the same thing. So that's where I'm standing on that one. Now, if you've never played the original Dead Island, I'll go ahead and talk about this game in general, and you'll get an idea of whether you like it or not. I'm actually going to go ahead and talk about all the stuff that really sucks about this game, which may turn a lot of you off, and that's okay. So I have a lot of tolerance for figuring out small things and just looking past a lot of flaws in order to enjoy the game. That's probably why I enjoyed the game. I liked some aspects of it, but there's a lot of stuff that really sucks. So I'll go ahead and talk about all that. So first off, in this particular game, they have a couple of missions that are like these needle in a haystack missions. And what I mean by that is you have to go into these giant green circles and find some very specific quest area or item in order to move on. And there was at least, I think, 2 or 3 of these missions early on in the game that I almost quit the game. I was so mad because I was walking around for 30, 45 minutes in this little circle looking. I was like, where is it? Like, I killed the same monsters over and over because they just keep respawning, and looked around in every little nook and cranny I can possibly find until I found one obscure position where I was like, okay, finally I can move on with the damn game and enjoy it more. And one of those examples is there is this area with all these buildings and rooftops and underground areas and stuff, and you have to find a way to get up to this hospital. And the way it ends up being is that you have to find this one little ladder, and that's really hard to find. The other one was there's a mission where you have to find a boat, and this one was even worse because I looked around for so long, and then finally I just stood on a platform in some area, and it was like, okay, I found the boat. But I looked around and I didn't see a boat. Apparently the boat was invisible. There was no boat. You had to find an invisible boat. And then you have to go and you have to get an engine for it, which is fine, and then you bring it back. But either way, it sucked. Like, I mean, you think, oh, it's going to be easy to find a boat. You just look everywhere there's water. Okay, well, not if the boat's invisible. So anyways, moving on, there's some other stuff. The hit detection, or whatever you want to call it, that's related to like jumping around and landing on things just kind of feels really crappy. So sometimes there are missions where you have to jump on top of things and then get onto a roof or something, and it's kind of actually hard to do those jumping missions because the, I don't know, hit detection is a little bit weird. Same thing with melee. It's not so bad if you're like, actually it was really easy for me when I started playing Joe, the guy with the fist weapons, because you just run up as close as possible to everything and you just start swinging away, and he's got a skill that allows him to regenerate health every time he hits something in the head, essentially. So you just sit there and whack away and you don't have to worry about taking damage. But with the knife lady here, she obviously doesn't have that, and every weapon has its own little range, and it's just really hard to determine the range of when a zombie's going to hit you and then when you're going to hit them. So it feels kind of clunky as far as the combat is concerned. And some other stuff that really, this is actually probably a deal breaker for a lot of people. So a lot of you guys are going to have trouble playing a game that is stuck in the 60 field of view, and this game essentially is stuck in 60 field of view. I did fix it. I changed mine to 90. It took a lot of tweaking to do so. However, the problem with changing your field of view to 90 is that you will no longer be able to use guns without shooting down the sights, because when you change the field of view back past the default, when you shoot your gun, it automatically shoots at the ground in front of you, and there's nothing you can do about that. So that's going to completely, if you want to play the gun specialist or whatever, then you can only play in 60 field of view, which seems like that would be the reason, that would be the one character that you would want to play in 90 field of view. That could be a deal breaker for a lot of you guys. You know, some of the stuff in this game is really dizzy. It makes you dizzy. So like when you step on zombies' heads, your screen moves all over the place, and you look straight down, and you lose sight of what's going on. And I mean, I don't usually have a problem with that stuff, but even I was like, holy crap! And like when you look really fast, the game blurs a lot. So there's a lot of effects that are just really extremely frustrating in this game, as far as just the graphics and stuff. So I don't know. The only other thing that I had that I found annoying was sometimes the auto weapon swap was a little bit annoying. Every time you go into a menu, it swaps to another weapon. You have to go back and find the weapon you're using, and you can find areas where you're like looting a bunch of stuff, and sometimes you barely push F, you know, the pickup key for a little bit longer than normal, and it swaps that weapon to your main weapon. So it's just annoying thing. Like, I almost didn't want to talk about it, but it's one of those things that it happens so much that it was actually frustrating to me. So just kind of bad UI design in general to the game. So, alright. So those are my dislikes out of the way. Just letting you guys know. That way, if you actually plan on playing this game, that might be some deal breakers for you. So, as far as what I liked about the game, I mean, honestly, it is a lot of fun. The combat is pretty cool, running around, and I actually enjoyed the game way more once I played the Joe character. So if you're planning on playing the game, I definitely suggest checking him out, although he is a little bit OP. So some of the cool stuff that you can do in the game now is, as you're running, you can run up and you can kick stuff, and it'll just shoot them way off into the distance. I mean, it's obviously extremely unreal physics, but that's what's fun about it. Like, I would try and line up my kicks so that I would kick a zombie into a wall, and boom, all of his arms would fly off, and it was just extremely satisfying. I actually do recall, though, there is one problem. Playing with Joe, you're going to have a lot of fun messing around with the fist weapons. However, one cool thing about this game is that there are modifications for your weapons that make them really cool. So you can turn your big stick into a big stick with a saw blade that sets enemies on fire, or you can make some giant mace that electrifies enemies, and there's all kinds of really cool stuff actually that you can do with modifications, and you'll find these throughout the game, and you can find hidden modifications and do quests for even stronger ones. However, if you're playing with the fist weapon, there's only 2 mods throughout the entire game that will modify your fist weapon, and it's not that exciting really. So unfortunately, you're playing this really fun stuff where you run around and punches things, but you don't get to experience the joy of modifying cool weapons and having cool weapon effects where you electrify and poison your enemies and like blow up stuff. You don't get to do any of that. So they really didn't think that out too well. They're like, okay, let's add in this new character, but let's do nothing that benefits him at all. So sad day on that one, to be honest with you. So if you want to mess with all that cool stuff, you're gonna just have to play one of the other classes and deal with the weird swingy mechanics, which is not so bad. Once you get, there's some weapons that have really long range, like there's some big axes, and way later in the game you get some katanas and stuff. If you're gonna be using blades and things like that. The 2-handed maces are great for the range on it. Essentially, things with longer range just feel like they're easier to land on zombies. Otherwise, you're gonna have to just run up and hump their legs while punching them, and that's gonna be how you have to actually land attacks in this game. So have fun with that one. Overall, I mean, the game is fun. I got through it. I played through it all the way, and I actually almost started playing it again with another person, but I was like, okay, that's enough. The skills in it they're okay. I mean, you look at the choices that you have, and there's really, in my opinion, there's not a lot of options for what you can do. Each character has their own little specialty, and if their specialty is in the combat tree, you got to get the combat stuff first, or you're kind of gimped. And then there are some survival stuff that is usually kind of important to grab. And then Fury, I end up getting last on my characters. Fury is kind of fun, but if you try and take your Fury stuff first, so essentially what Fury is, as you're attacking enemies, you start building up this rage meter, and once it maxes out, you can turn on your Fury attack, which is different for each character. So with Joe, you grab this big old stick out, all the enemies turn red, and you just whack, whack, whack. You basically one-shot everything, and it's pretty cool. And then with other characters, there's the chick with the guns. She pulls out a sidearm, just bam, 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 bam. She shoots everything really fast. The guy with throwing knives, he like throws knives at like 4 enemies at a time. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of really neat stuff you can do with Fury, but unfortunately, I honestly didn't use Fury until like 8 hours into the game. You just don't think about it because it's up so little amount of the time. And really the main uses for Fury is like, okay, I'm looking at this really strong enemy here, and I want to kill him in 2 hits. So I'm going to turn on Fury and attack him. And you'll use that every, maybe like once an hour or something like that. So there's no real point to speccing in that more as a icing on the cake type of thing later on in the game, at least in my personal opinion. Maybe you guys found better use for it in your everyday zombie slaying, but honestly I could not. And then that's pretty much all there is to it. So there are some other things. The dead zones in this game, there are some dead zones which actually end up acting kind of like instances that you would think of from traditional MMOs, where you just go in and the enemies are a little bit harder. There's always like some buffed up boss at the end, and then you can get some special modification equipment, like the blue rare mod equipment that you'll use for other stuff, I guess. The problem with that is that I originally, like early on in the game, I went into one of these dead zones and I killed everything, and I was like, okay, that was a waste of time because there's a bunch of lock boxes, and at the time I didn't have lockpicking skills. And so I went back out, and then later on I got a quest to go back into the same area. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess all of these little dead zone areas are actually going to be quests. So I decided to skip all of the dead zones until like almost the end of the game. I was like at 80%, and I was looking back, I was like, I didn't go to any of those dead zones. And so I looked it up. I was like, okay, wow. All the dead zones, those are optional dungeon areas where you get those, it's the only place to get those modification items to complete some of your quests. And I didn't realize this until way later in the game, and at that point I was like, oh, screw it, I don't even care anymore. I did like 1 or 2 of them, fought a zombie, but at that point it was a little too late. So they don't really do a good job of explaining a lot of the mechanics in this game, and it's really hard to find information on the mechanics. So for example, some of the weapons, they have a DPS and then they have a force, which you can kind of like figure it out just by context clues, I guess, which I'm guessing force just contributes to how far you throw your enemies and how easy it is to break their legs and stuff like that. But overall, there's just a few things like that. I'm like, well, I don't really understand a lot of the mechanics in this game. So overall, there is just like a very specific thing about this game that is fun, which is running around, chopping off zombies' heads, kicking them around, and just, you know, looting things and overall exploring and things like that. But there's just so many glaring mistakes and I guess pitfalls of this game that I think a lot of people are going to find it not so satisfying. So if you are like me and you can look past that stuff and just, you know, goof off and have fun slashing stuff and look past all of the massive mistakes, then you'll probably enjoy this game. But if a lot of that stuff is important to you, you're probably going to be one of the ones that spits on this game and calls it shit. The other thing is I played the entire thing solo, but I do recall playing the first game all the way through with a friend, and it was it was actually more satisfying playing with a friend. So another idea is, if you are going to play this game and you want to have the best experience, I would definitely recommend playing with a friend. In fact, a lot of the missions are designed with the thought of, oh, you should probably have a friend for that one, because there's a mission where you have to pick up some item that makes it to where you can't use your weapons, you can't run, and then you have to like take multiple of them, really long distance, put it in a vehicle, then walk all the way back, get the other one, bring it all the way back, put it in the vehicle. Missions like this are just really not fun. Like, oh, I'm carrying around a giant engine, herp to derp. And so if you're with a group, then obviously like two of you can carry the items and the other two can like defend you, and it's more fun that way. But overall, playing solo is the least fun you're going to have. But again, I played through it all the way solo. I beat the game just recently, and I enjoyed myself. So overall, I don't know. I don't think this game is really worth the price tag, to be honest. But if you're playing with a bunch of friends, then you might have a little bit of fun. And there's not a lot of new games out right now, so who knows? Maybe this is just your last resort. Pick it up, and if you enjoyed the first one, then obviously you don't really need this review. You're going to enjoy this one anyways. But if you're new to the game, then, you know, at least now you don't have super high expectations, and so you won't be extremely disappointed. All right, guys, that's it for now, though. I just wanted to give you my review on Dead Island Riptide. It's Colby Cheese. Peace out.